for physical health, mental health, healthcare costs. We need to get the country moving, and I think cycling's one way that you can do that.
John, it is great to be here with you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for having us, honestly.
You're always welcome.
Well, thank you. I think we should start at the beginning for you.
Yeah.
Trek is a family business.
Yeah.
When do you consider your career at Trek to have begun?
You know, I would sometimes go with my father to Trek to count inventory, annual inventory. So that was kind of at an early age. But I would say junior year in college, I worked in the warehouse. So I would pick and pack parts. And once I finished that task, after the UPS man came and picked everything up, then I would get on the phones and I would sell. And so I would say that's when my official career began at Trek.
What are some of your other really early memories?
Oh, God, I have so many. When I first my first day at Trek, the training program was one day. And so I graduated from school, went home, got my wisdom teeth pulled, and the next day I was at Trek. And they took me out to lunch, and I ordered a beer. And I will always remember everybody looking at me and figuring out maybe that wasn't such a very good idea. I remember my first boss, Joel Holden, he told me, he said, all the great salespeople drive on Sunday. And I lived in the Rocky Mountains and I had like 12 states. And so I would always drive on Sunday just to be in position for Monday morning. There were some good times there. When I started, Trek was like at the peak. It had grown and grown, and it was doing about $20 million in business. And the day I started, Trek just kind of crashed. And it was the best education anyone could ever have. My father was kind of the money behind the business, but wasn't running the business at that time. And to be a salesperson and actually kind of watch the scene unfold, I learned so many lessons that have been foundational to me in my journey at Trek. It helped a lot.
So as you were a kid, the company was rising.
Yeah.
The day you start, it crashes. What facilitates that crash?
I think it was arrogance. I think it was not focusing on the customer. It was kind of Trek focused on Trek, and Trek didn't take care of the customer, and that was it. And then there got into some product issues, and it kind of went downhill from there.
What did you learn selling Trek bicycles at a time when maybe people didn't want them as much as they had previously?
Yeah, I think it all gets back to the customer. It's like, what can you do to add value to the customer? And my father came in. I think I was 23 at the time. I'd been with the company for a year. He came in and he took over running the business. And he studied the business for 2 or 3 months, and he got everybody together in the warehouse, and there were less than 100 employees. And he said, we're going to have a quality product at a competitive value, and we're going to deliver it on time. And that's it. And it sounds so boring today, but at that time, Trek was doing none of those things. And it really focused the company, and it was something that drove the company for a while. And the importance of having a mission, that was one of the great early lessons.
And that's something you learned from your father?
For sure.
As you sort of think back on the time you spent with him before you were running the business, what are the key things that he taught you?
Oh, he taught me so much. Being honest and ethical above anything else all the time, period. He was a man of incredible integrity. Listening, I've never met a better listener than he was. The importance of the customer is he focused on the customer. He was really good at that. And then he started out, he was an accountant. And so he was a working capital guy, and that was a big key for him. But and then I'd say the last thing is just high humility. It was never ever about him. It was always about the company. It was always about the employee, never about himself. And I think, as time passes on, his contribution to the foundation of Trek, not just the person who started Trek, but the foundation of the business, is incredible.
So there's a distinction or a connection between someone being the founder of a business and building the foundation of it.
Yeah, for sure. And he was a character. And he was this small guy. I mean, he was like 5'6" or 5'8", and my nickname for him was the big guy. And he was also on the board of this company, Quad Graphics. And there was a change at Quad Graphics. The founder had passed away, and so they made him the chairman. So he was the chairman at Trek, and he was the chairman at Quad Graphics. So one day I said to him, I called him the chairman for a nickname. And the meeting ended, and he goes, "I'd like to see you for a minute." I said, "Okay." He goes, "You know that nickname, the big guy?" He goes, "That's the one I like." And so it shall be.
Was it important to him that Trek stayed a family business?
Yeah, it was.
Was it important to you?
To me, it's important. I've said that my goal is for Trek to last for 100 years and to be led by level 5 leaders driving sparkling minibuses. That's my dream for the company. It's very few companies last that long. I was giving a presentation, Trek's 49, next year it'll be 50, and so I put into ChatGPT chances of a successful 49-year-old company lasting 100 years, and the answer came back 8%. And so I play against that number every day, and one of the things that I do in my job is make sure that Trek's a successful company long after I'm gone. Have I built the clock? And I think we've got an amazing team of people at the bike company, and I think that's one of the things we're doing is we're building a business that will last.
Tell me a little bit about how the bike market has changed and how you're sort of looking forward to see how it will change, because 100 years is a long time.
God, there's been so much. I mean, I've been at Trek for 41 years, and there's been so much change. I started in the business really before mountain bikes. And so you had triathlon bikes, which were new. You had mountain bikes, which was a huge boom in the business. And then you just take a look at what's going on today, and you see the impact that Ebikes have had on the entire bike business. It's unbelievable. So every time you think the business this is the way it's going to be for a long time, it changes. And, the bike business, just like any other business, will continue to evolve. And so it's really important is, do you have an organization that can move quickly?
When you think about the role technology has sort of played in Trek's evolution, I'd be really curious to hear more about that, because what you're describing is a process by which bikes have more tech directly attached to them. They're not acoustic.
I think if you break down technology, I would say on the product and behind the curtains. And so on the product, you've gone from acoustic bikes to e-bikes, you've gone from regular shifting to electronic shifting. Digital will have a much bigger impact on bicycles in the next 10 years. There's all sorts of things on the product. But then if you go behind the curtains, like we just came out with a Trek app, which is super cool. And I'll just tell you one feature of this app is Part of our mission is to provide incredible hospitality to our customers. If you're on the Trek app, at any time there's something called Ride Line. You can just hit that and it connects directly to Trek. It's kind of like the Butterball hotline. And you
What's the Butterball hotline?
I'll say I'm dating myself here. It's like you can call it Butterball and ask them anything you want about cooking a turkey. But for Trek, we've always provided this incredible hospitality to our retailers. Now we can provide it directly to consumers. So you can call up and you can go, hey, I'm on the side of the road, I got a flat tire, can you walk me through this? You can call up Trek and go, you know what, I just bought a car rack, I'm putting it on the car, I got a question about, call us up, we'll take care of you. We've always done it with retailers, now we can do it with consumers. So this is a digital aspect meeting hospitality.
When you think about Trek's trajectory, the Lance effect had a really big, already you're like, why are you laughing?
Oh, it's such an incredible period of history.
What effect did it have on Trek's business expressly? Because it sounds like it was big.
It had a big impact on Trek's business, but it had a bigger impact on the entire bicycle business. It was the fact that here was this American winning the Tour de France. People were waking up early in the morning to watch him on TV in July winning the Tour de France. It was a magical time, and it inspired a lot of people to get out on bicycles. And Trek benefited from that. Our competitors benefited from it. The sea rose, and so did all the boats.
That was shortly after a couple years after you took over the business,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When you think about negotiating that time, was it a huge period of growth? It sounds like it was.
It was a big period of growth.
What does it mean to retain quality in a big period of growth?
You know, to me, there's different aspects of quality. There's product quality. There's customer quality. You know, are you taking care of the customer? Is one side of quality, and another side is the product quality, and both of them are super important. And I've seen both sides of the coin, and you want to be on the quality side, on the doing things right, on taking care of people.
I was reading somewhere that early in your career, your dad was very interested in quality and you were very interested in quantity.
Huh. Okay.
I was going to say, is that accurate?
But I don't think that's accurate.
Was there any ways in which you ran the business really differently?
Than my dad?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that part is 100%
That part is
true.
100% true. So in what way was it
100% true.
different?
Well, he and I had a really interesting relationship. We worked very closely together. I would talk to him almost every day. And he was kind of the contrarian. So if I said it was terrible in Wisconsin in January, he would say, well, you know, it's a beautiful time of the year. And it would just go, you know, if I said sales were great, he would say, well, they're not nearly what they could be. And it was really hard to get him to agree on anything. So we would kind of go at it. And he was kind of the great contrarian. But I think that's one of the things that made our relationship really special, is that we spent a lot of time together. We talked about everything. And, you know, we always worked it out. Always. And, you know, one of my favorite photographs is a picture of he and I having a beer at a Trek event. And it's just he and I in the corner, and I'm kind of sitting down and he's hovering over me. And that's how all the decisions were made at Trek. It would be he and I, the big ones, and we just kind of talk it through and make a call and go.
You know, it's been almost 50 years. Almost.
Yeah.
Almost.
Right.
What does it mean to be successful as a family business after 50 years? And what does it mean to sort of move forward together?
So I think there's a lot of pride. like, you look at financial statements, once a month, and you look at sales reports every single morning. But the pride that you have in building a business that has lasted and that makes a contribution to the community and really does extraordinary work, that's something that people can take pride in. The family can take pride in that. And most importantly, the employees can. If you take a look at Trek, one of the smartest things my dad did is there's an ESOP. The employees have always owned 25% of Trek. If you take a look at...
Since the very beginning.
Since the very beginning. If you take a look at how long people work at Trek, like, you take a look at Paul Moran, the head of North American sales. He's been there for 35 years. Lori Cook, she's in charge of global customer care. She's been there for 34 years. Cindy, who is my assistant, who truly runs Trek, has been there for 29 years. The people stay at Trek a really long time because it's a family environment and because people take such pride that it's their company. All of us have built this thing, and its success matters. It matters to a lot of people.
How do you think the definition of success for Trek has evolved over its 49 years?
Oh, wow. Well, at certain times that would be survival. At other times that success would be, did you hit a goal? And my father loved goals. He loved big goals out in the future. So when we would hit those, that would be success. He always wanted to sell 100,000 bikes. That was like, God, if we could ever sell 100,000 bikes. And so I had the 100,000th bike pulled off the assembly line, and I gave it to him. That was the first time that we sold that was a big deal to him. And so there can be milestones, but somebody once said something about a great person is somebody who reaches their potential and gives back to others. And I've always thought that was true of Trek, that Trek reaching its potential and giving back to others, doing things for other people is a really good thing.
Tell me a little bit about Trek's customer. Some of these bikes are thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Who is a Trek customer?
Here's another thing. Just a quote that it's always stuck into my head is, you can judge the greatness of a person not at one extremity, but by their ability to touch both at the same time. And if you take a look at Trek touches both extremities at the same time. We sell a lot of kids' bikes, really cool kids' bikes, but then we sell a lot of $15,000 Project One custom bikes. We touch both extremities and everything in between. So you can have a racer dude who's buying a new Gen 8 Madone. You can have little Jimmy or Susie buying a new kid's bike, and you can have everything in between. There's so many people riding bikes and using them for different things. And the other thing that's cool about Trek is it started in the US, but it's a global company. So, I was in Europe all last week, and you're out for a run in the morning because I don't have a bike, and some woman rides by on her Trek e-bike on the way to work. And you smile, and you go, got one. And that's, there's so many people using the bikes for so many different things. And then yesterday, one of the biggest races of the year, Amstel Gold. It's in Holland, and a Trek guy ends up winning the race. And you're just like, yes. So we participate in a lot of different parts of the market.
You mentioned that Trek is a global company.
Yeah.
I was reading somewhere where you sort of said something to the effect of, Trek has to be an international business. That's part of what success looks like. But it is a very difficult time to be an international business.
Brutal.
Oh, okay, so yeah, I love how we're already here. Tariffs, how have they affected Trek?
Huge. We're an international business. We design products in the United States. We build products in the United States. We source products in Asia. We have a large factory in Europe. We do more than 50% of our business outside the United States. We're a global company. And we've got tariff policies that are changing on a constant basis. You really don't know what's coming next, and you're trying to navigate a very, very tricky situation. You don't know what's coming.
How do you plan when you don't know what's coming?
Well, you do that every day. And, you always take a look at scenarios. And I always like to have best case, what I think is going to happen, and the worst case. And you go all the way to the edge. And you go, okay, let's go to the worst case scenario, and what are we going to do here? But it has had an incredible impact on our business, and not on the good side.
When you think about the best case scenario you're planning for, what does that look like?
Well, I don't even go to the best. The best case is that roll back to pre-Liberation Day, and we're at what the tariffs used to be.
And worst case?
Well, the worst case was the tariffs that were announced at the high side, which was take the tariffs, add 10%, and then in some cases add another 30 or 40%. And then you take a look at China, and we still get some product out of China, and it's like, I stopped counting. It's like 100%, 125%.
Wherever it landed today.
Yeah.
What's the scenario in the middle?
I don't. We're going to play the ball as it lies, and we've contacted our representatives and shared our thoughts as to what we think trade should be. I'm sure there is a middle, and that's why I like to do best case, worst case, and that way we're covered. But you can't go back and historically look at any country and have seen somebody implemented huge tariffs, and boy, that was a great idea. And I think the markets have already spoken as to what they think about large tariffs. And I'm just telling you, we just increased our prices last week, 10%.
Wow. Was that hard to do?
No.
It was necessary.
It was not. We have no choice. And what the consumer hasn't seen yet, I'm on the phone with other CEOs. It's like I'm talking to somebody who's in a very large business, and they're like, wait till back to school, because those prices are going up 50%. You send somebody to go buy school supplies for Jimmy and Susie, and you're going to see 30 to 50% increases. And we haven't seen, what we've seen is talk out of Washington as to this is what the trade policies and the tariffs are going to be, and all we're talking about is really the tariffs. You haven't gone far enough down the chain to understand the true implications of this. And the true implications are, okay, your bike's going to cost, this is the first price increase, 10% more, but your school supplies are going to go here, your iPhone cost is going to go here. It's like, we're in a global economy. This is not a US-centric economy, it's a global economy. And the world is getting smaller and smaller, and we used to lead the world. And now we're saying, Fortress America. And it's a massive shift. The implications that this has from a business standpoint, from a political standpoint, I think it's beyond what a lot of Americans think. And over time, we're going to see how it plays out, and I'm not sure anyone exactly knows how it's going to play out.
If you could have the answer to one question right now today about how this will play out, what would it be?
What are the tariff rates going to be? Are they going to be, are we going to cut a lot of deals? And there's even a scenario where the tariff rates are lower. You could get the U.S. and Europe come together and say, there's an old saying, through chaos comes change. Your best case scenario here is there's so much chaos right now that there's going to be a massive amount of change. And you could see it, I read one article that predicted that there might end up being a free trade zone between the U.S. and Europe. That would be amazing. We'll see what happens.
But you've also seen ups and downs before. Yeah. What have you learned from those previous cycles? No pun intended.
Yeah, that was good.
Thank you. I didn't even mean it.
I think stay in the game is a good thing. I think the brutal facts is a big thing at Trek. Everybody who owns a business at Trek, I always want to know, tell me the good and tell me the brutal facts. Anybody who has a good handle on their business, they can really explain to you those two things with a focus on the brutal facts. Like if you've gone through crises before, and I've figured that this is my fourth, you want to really be able to focus on the brutal facts.
The cycling industry, as I understand it,
Yeah.
saw a boom during the pandemic,
Yeah.
and then there was a correction.
Yeah.
What can you walk me through how Trek negotiated that entire process? Speaking of cycles.
That's a long story. Let's go here. I think we go to somewhere around March 12th, 2020, the world shuts down. Pandemic, we're closing down airports, we're closing down businesses, and we're like, oh my God, the sky is falling. So we're doing internal projections. We're saying sales are going to be down 40% because nobody's going to be riding a bike because everything's shut down. And we're on that from like March 12th to like early April. And somebody walks into my office. Dan Titus walks into my office. He's like, I was just on a phone call with a retailer in Orlando, and they said there are lines outside their door to buy bikes. I'm like, are you kidding me? And we have this data because we supply a POS system to a lot of our customers, and all of a sudden we could see a spike in sales. And we're like, and then we started to peel the onion back. Why? And it's like, well, people can't go outside, so here they can go outside, they can ride a bike, they can be with their family, they can do an activity. And it just spreads like wildfire. And our warehouses just get drained. Like 30 days, 45 days later, our warehouses are just drained. It was crazy. I've never seen anything like it. It was fish jumping into the boat like no other time. And so that was 2020, 2021. And then the business is just going like this. So you think, oh, well, if it's going like this, it's just going to keep going like this. Trees grow to the sky. And so one of the lessons is trees do not grow to the sky. And what was happening is a lot of retailers were placing just a ton of orders because they couldn't get everything they wanted. So they just kept placing orders. And we're like, God, we're geniuses. And we were not geniuses. And so we kept producing more and more, and then the music stopped. And there were 60-day lead times had grown to 500-day lead times. And so you had this massive amount of inventory. And so what you've seen in 23, 24, and 25 is working that inventory level down. And by the time we get to the end of 25, I think we'll get to a normalized place. But it's been an amazing ride.
No pun intended.
Yes.
Or pun intended. The sort of to that end, What bikes have been your best sellers over the last few years? What categories?
E-bikes for sure. E-bikes have been a big part of Trek's growth. It's a big part of our sales right now. But, you know, if you take a look at racing bikes, we do really well in racing bikes. The unit volume isn't that high. The dollar volume is really high. We have a really strong brand there. We've got a great product team. We've delivered some incredible products. So racing bikes have been really good.
Are you looking to expand in those categories, or are you still right-sizing after the pandemic?
Oh, we're always looking to expand. That gets back to the salesperson in me. But one of the parts of our mission is only awesome products we love. So we like to give people within the business, you know, here you're the road bike business, and you're in charge of the mountain bike business, and you're the pavement business, and what we're really focused on is, are we delivering awesome products that we love? And we set a higher standard than consumers. And you know, the beauty about our mission is there will be 100 conversations at Trek today about, is that an awesome product you love? Because that's the gold standard.
Tell me about, we've talked around it a little bit, but what role does sustainability play in Trek's business?
Okay, so I'm on this.
You sat back. You're like, all right.
I'm on this bike ride with Rory Kennedy, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and she's a filmmaker, and she had just done a film. I think the title of it's a documentary, Above and Beyond, and it was going to be a tribute to her uncle, President Kennedy, and the trip to the moon. And so she goes to NASA and she interviews a bunch of people, and she comes to the conclusion that the people at NASA know more about the planet Earth and its health than anybody else. And so the documentary kind of flips from being this tribute to President Kennedy to being a study of NASA and what NASA knows about the Earth. And so if you really take a look at the atmosphere, and you say, how many parts per million of carbon are there in the atmosphere? It goes along, and if you take a look at time from 0 to, let's say, 1900, it just goes along, and it's always around 200 parts of carbon per million. And then all of a sudden, if you look at it over this 2,000-year period of time, it just goes 200, 200, 200, 200, and then spikes. And today it's like above 430, and it just keeps going up. And so after that bike ride with Rory, I came back and I watched it, and I went, holy shit. Seriously. And so I got all the top leaders at Trek in a room, and we watched the documentary. And so we said we were going to put a goal right there, is that we were going to become a sustainability company fast, and that we were going to be an example for others. And we did that. There used to be like 33 pieces of plastic in a Trek bicycle box, and now there's either 0 or 1. We've gone through and we've taken so much plastic out of our bikes. It's amazing. But we did a study on Trek's whole carbon footprint, and we said, where is it all coming from? And 97% of Trek's carbon footprint is product. It's not people driving cars to the office. It's not, you know, whether the lights are on or the lights are off at the office. It's the products that we make. So how can we take carbon out of those products? So I'll give you one example. We recently completed a study, and we do a series of mountain bikes called the Marlin. And we said, okay, where is all the carbon in a Marlin? And a lot of it is in the frame, the aluminum frame. And we make we use dirty aluminum. And dirty aluminum uses like 20 units of carbon. If you use clean aluminum, it uses 4. So we said, okay, let's do clean aluminum. And like, okay, that's going to be like $8 more a bike. Well, if you do a lot of Marlins, it's a lot of money. So we're like, well, I think we can kind of figure out how to make that $8 less. And so we did. We made it a lot less. And so we shifted all the production on every Trek bike that's aluminum over to clean aluminum. And so by doing that, we had a 2030 environmental target, and we will hit it in 2026 or 2027 because we went after the low-hanging fruit and we made a massive difference. But we've had significant environmental wins. We publish an annual report. We give it to everybody because the biggest way we can make a difference is if other people see it and they learn something and they adopt it. One of the happiest moments I had, I was in Asia and I was going through a factory that assembled Treks, and they were assembling another brand, and the other brand was using our packaging. And I went, awesome, that's good. And so my hope is all of our competitors will see this difference between clean and dirty aluminum, and they'll use the same aluminum, because that's how Trek can do something for the planet, and that's how we can be a multiplier.
So you have revamped your supply chain to meet this goal, it sounds like.
We're always out. This is a long-term game, and it's not one switch. It's 100 different things, and we keep working it.
Walk us through what that supply chain looks like today.
Oh, well, this gets back to a little bit of the tariff conversation. If you take a look at, like the cranks on a bike, and you take a look at brakes, and you take a look at cassettes, all that stuff comes from Asia. There's a huge company in Japan called Shimano. They've been a long-term partner. There's a company in Chicago called SRAM. They produce a lot of their parts in Asia. And then we have assembly factories. So we assemble bikes in Waterloo, Wisconsin, really high-end bikes. We assemble a lot of bikes in Asia, and then we assemble a lot of bikes in Germany, north or outside of Dresden in a town called Chemnitz.
Are you traveling a lot to see these factories?
Yeah, I was in Germany last week at our German factory, and I'll tell you, one of the proudest moments I had was I was in that German factory, and we just won an award in Germany, the #1 supplier in Germany. Of all the people most competitive market in the world, the #1 supplier ranked by all the retailers is Trek. So I thought, wow, this is really a big deal. So I had medals made up. The marketing department did this great job, and they had medals made. And so I always, whenever I travel to the factory, I'll give a little speech and answer employee questions. I like doing that. And so at the end of it, I congratulated everybody, because one of the areas we'd really improve was product quality and out-of-the-box build. And I thanked them for that. And then I said, and because of that, I have a medal for you to congratulate you on a job very well done. And then I went out and I handed out the medal to as many employees as I could. And there was a group of women from the Ukraine who work in the factory in Dresden. And I was able to shake each one of their hands and give them that medal. That was a great moment.
You mentioned that we've talked about geopolitics implicitly and explicitly.
It matters.
Why does it matter for bikes?
It matters for bikes because there are a lot of bikes sold, and people have X amount of money, and when the prices of bikes go up, it affects people's pocketbooks. That's one thing. The bike industry employs a lot of people all around the world. There are a lot of people that Trek employs in the United States. Those people's jobs are tied to the health of the bicycle business. Tariffs can have a massive impact on a company, and that potentially can have a huge impact on employment levels. Over 50% of Trek's business is done outside the United States. And so one of the points that I think through when I talk about tariffs is, you take a look at companies like Trek and Nike and Apple and Meta and McDonald's and Starbucks. These are global brands. People for over 100 years have aspired to buy American brands. And when we pick a fight on Canada, we're not building the brand. One of my favorite lines is always the victor, never the victim. And we're talking too much about we're getting screwed and people are ripping us off. And it's like, I think we've done pretty well. And what my vision of America is the victor. It's like where 1 + 1 = 3. There doesn't always have to be a winner and a loser. It's like everybody can win. That's America. That's the Marshall Plan. That's where we lift people up, and it does everybody good. And you can look at that from a country basis. You can take that all the way back to a small company like Trek. It's a small world. We're all interconnected.
To that end, what should be done? What should American and federal policy look like when it comes to supporting companies like Trek?
I think that's a great question. And I think if you really take a look at what should be done, it's kind of like, let's step back. I looked up, I did another, ChatGPT thing, and I said, give me global tariffs by country. And it's like the average global tariff by country in the US is like, 2% or something. It's really low. But there's not a huge tariff difference between all the countries in the world if you average everything out. I think it would be really good to step back and say, what should our tariff policy be? Do we have the right policy? What changes should be made? And have some experts who actually know by industry, like, do we have the right tariffs for automobiles? I don't know. Do we have the right tariff policy on bicycles? I can tell you we don't. I know that. That's the one thing I know. And somebody could go in and they could change the tariff policy, and you could actually assemble probably more bikes in the US. And it would be good for everybody. But you got to get into the detail. And somebody could do that, and this isn't like a 5-year study. Somebody could get into it and come up with the answers in 3 months. Do the work.
As you think about Trek's future,
Yep.
Why is it important to keep a connection to Waterloo?
Humility. Humility, history. Trek was born in Waterloo. You don't turn your back on history. It's part of who we are. There's a lot of people who've always said we're the grinders. We're not, we just get stuff done. Sometimes it's 3 yards in a cloud of dust. We just keep going. We have a work ethic. We have high standards. We have a high code of ethics. Waterloo is a good place for Trek.
As you think about the next 5 years,
Yeah.
How do you see Trek growing and evolving? What does that look like?
There's so many. I go back to living up to our potential. Jim Collins came to see Trek in 2018, and Jim Collins said, the way for Trek to become an iconic company is for everybody in here, and he's looking at 300 people, for everybody in here to make your sparkling minibus a pocket of excellence. And I took that to heart. And so we've taken Trek and we've divided it up, and we have some 700 different minibuses at Trek. And so my thing at Trek is I want you to make sure your minibus is a level 5 sparkling minibus. That's what I care about. The speed, the direction of your minibus. Trek has so much potential when it comes to individual products, individual services, that it's really all about reaching our potential. That's what people strive for every day. And you've got a simple mission: only create awesome products that we love, provide incredible hospitality to our customers, and change the world by getting more people on bikes. And I think especially as you look today, when you take a look at mental health issues, getting outside, exercising, you take a look at environmental issues, getting people on bikes, you take a look at congestion, I think the best days for the bicycle are ahead, and I think the best days for Trek for sure are in the future.
What does the future of bicycling in the US look like, and where does that intersect with the future of Trek?
I think bicycling in the United States is important for a bunch of different reasons. Number one is just exercise. If you take a look at it today, 42% of Americans are obese, and that number is going to 50%. You cannot have a great nation when 50% of the nation is obese. The government helped to bring smoking down. The government helped take care of drunk driving. I think the government can play a bigger role with the health of the American people, and the biggest aspect of that is getting people outside and getting people exercising. I don't care whether it's walking, running, or riding your bike. Pick a card, any card, but I really believe that exercise over the next 20 years is going to become big in the US. It has to. So I think that's one thing. I just take a look at transportation. A majority of car trips are 2 miles or less. And would you rather drive a car 2 miles or less, or would you rather be on a bike, or would you rather be walking? And you see it. In the United States, if we define a car trip, and we say going to work, going to school, going to the restaurant, going to the market, 1.5% of trips are taken by bicycle. If you go to Holland, that number is 25%. If you go other places in Europe, it's over 10%. And you have to say, from a societal standpoint, do we want more and more people driving cars, or would it be really good if people rode their bikes or walked? And I think for physical health, mental health, healthcare costs, we need to get the country moving. And I think cycling's one way that you can do that.
Tell us about your competition. How do you compete with other manufacturers?
Every day. I think we compete against other companies, and then we compete against ourselves. And somebody once said, 85% of your opportunities are within your four walls. And so I just know that 85% of Trek's opportunities are for sure within our four walls. We control the success of Trek going forward, and it really is up to how awesome are the products that we develop, how incredible is the service that we offer. It's really focused on what we do. We have some amazing competitors, and competition's not going to become less. It will become more, and we just need to do a better job every day.
Why would it be difficult for Trek to move all of its manufacturing to the United States?
Yeah, this goes back to the mid-90s. We actually had a manufacturing plant that built a lot of volume bikes in the US. And it's really hard because the infrastructure doesn't exist. There are not frame manufacturers. There aren't parts manufacturers. Like, you can't buy tires. You don't have rim suppliers. You don't have brake suppliers. You don't have crank suppliers. All that business is gone. It hasn't been in the US for 40 years. It doesn't exist. So to snap your fingers and go, let's reshore everything, by the time you reshored stuff and started at that, you're 5 years down the road. And for people to think that you can just go like that, you can't. And then there's a second question here, and that is, what jobs does the government really want to help industry create? And do you want to have people making t-shirts and blue jeans? I mean, is that unemployment rate in the U.S. is, I don't know, 3.5% or 4%? And you can go to Walmart and you can buy a pair of blue jeans for $11.55. Do we want those jobs? I don't think so. And so right now at Trek, we build really high-end bikes in the U.S. We pay people well. We build the best bikes in the world. Do you want to make lower-end bikes in the U.S.? There's some changes that you could make to encourage more bicycle assembly in the U.S., but it's using a scalpel, not an axe.
You've mentioned ChatGPT a couple of times. What role does AI play in your business, if any?
Let's say that IT plays a huge role within Trek. Like, we continue to add more and more IT resources because it's such a huge part of Trek. And when you have a really big IT infrastructure, I think AI is going to play a really big part in the future of your business. And you can see it today in a number of different jobs, just in making jobs easier. But if you take a look at digitizing product information and you just take a look at coding and what impact AI will have on that, it's pretty significant.